Pleased to be here. Just to introduce myself quickly before we go on to the guest, and obviously what the topic of the session is about, because obviously on the agenda it says SaaStock panel, which we just like to keep you guessing. But yeah, I'm Alec Theuma, co-founder of SaaStock, which is another SaaS conference in Europe. We like to say it's a global gathering of SaaS leaders. It takes place in Dublin in October this year. And we're expecting around about sort of 3,000 people from about 50 different countries. So it's a big event, but we do lots of small things around it: workshops, SaaS retreats, lots of dinners and parties. So it's very social. And we also started a tour this year, which was a good idea at the time, but is actually bloody hard work. So I'm traveling a lot and very tired. But that's me. My guests are actually more interesting as they're both SaaS founders. And so I'll let them introduce themselves, and then we can go on to what the topic is. So, Bridget.
Hi, everybody. My name's Bridget Harris. I run a company. I'm co-founder and CEO of an online scheduling company called You Can Book Me. So we do the kind of things you'd expect to do with bookings and appointment management in your calendars, Google, iCloud, that sort of thing. Myself and my co-founder, Keith, you'll hear a bit about this. He's my husband and CTO, so we're husband and wife team, bootstrapped it for a long time. We've been running You Can Book Me since about 2011, but previous to that, we'd built a product called When Is Good in 2007, and previous to that, we built a product called Tickboxer that nobody would have ever heard of, because I was the only user of that actual product, in 2003. And in fact, actually, at LTV last year, I did a talk on the 10 products that me and Keith built together before You Can Book Me actually took off, which I was sort of taking on the premise that VCs always throw about, which is that they have to extract 10 times return on any investment because 9 out of their 10 products fail. And that's a great pitch for some reason for people, as far as I can see. But in our experience, it's true. We built 10 products, 9 of which failed, except for You Can Book Me. So that's the story of where we are today, 7 years later.
James.
Hi, everyone. I'm James. I'm CEO of a company called GoSquared. We're a marketing and sales software platform. So we bring together a bunch of tools that are normally built by different companies: analytics, live chat, CRM, marketing automation, all in one really nice platform. I feel like we've got some similarities here because we've been around a long time too. GoSquared's currently a team of about 8 people, and we started this company when we were spotty teenagers. It was 2006, I think, when we started this company, and it's changed a bit in that time, and I've changed a bit. I'm less spotty now. We're now a profitable company. We've raised a bit of money along the way, but we've had a bit of a whirlwind tour, not the standard SaaS story, I guess, and more than happy to talk about it. Yeah.
Cool. I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about it. So be prepared. Just to give you an idea or what the topic is. We've obviously, I've been at a few events recently, and quite a few of them, say our own SaaStock events, and we've had a bunch of founders on stage from all different stages. A lot of them have raised investment, and they've been Series A, Series B. Some have even been public, and it's kind of nice to have some of these stories and some of the inspirational stuff as well. But one of the takeaways that some of the feedback that we got, but also that I found, was that actually not all of this is necessarily aimed at the people in the audience. They're not quite there yet. They hadn't raised 32 million or scaled into the US. And what is more sort of, or what we thought would be interesting, is talk about the day-to-day sort of management of a SaaS company, the nitty-gritty, what you do each day, and then go to sleep and come back, do again, and I think like Alexis Brenner at Receipt Bank, he talked about, sort of each day, like going to work and picking up a shovel and, starting to dig each day. And so I wanted to find out, what you guys are digging effectively. So yeah, I mean, we've had a little bit, just the intro in terms of what you guys do. I guess, if we start then, with effectively, what does, your typical day, you're both CEO, founders, what does the typical day sort of look like? How are you spending your time, Bridget?
Well, if you don't mind, Alex, I'd really like to know, sort of maybe just with a show of hands, how many people here are running their own companies right now? So how many? Yeah, that's what I guess. So I mean, I'm sure we're going to learn a lot from each other in terms of what we're sharing. And so what I'm saying about what I do isn't obviously necessarily the best practice, probably isn't at all. But I run a remote company. So how many of you guys are remote? Oh, good. Over there. They like to be near the door, just in case they've got to go at any point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's I recognise that. So yeah, we're a remote company. We're spread around. We've got a couple of people in America. We've got 5 people in America. We've got a couple of people in Spain, and we have 4 people in the UK. So part of my job is corralling, what those conversations, what's going on, what are the team talking about, and in a way being a bit of a glue. And then I see my job as being sort of a third that job, team conversations, being aware of what's going on, helping articulate what we're trying to achieve across people who are basically heads down getting the work done. And I'm the one with my head up saying, this is why we're doing it today, or this is what's important in this week. A third is doing all of the jobs, however trivial or otherwise, that we just haven't hired other people to do. So I can be doing anything from, organizing T-shirts. I know this sounds pretty trivial, but if you haven't got a marketing person, then there's nobody else in the company that essentially can get the credit card out and order T-shirts or do whatever you want to do. So I end up doing a lot of jobs where I assess how long it takes me to do them. And after a while, if those jobs merit hiring somebody, then I've proved the case, because I can see what I've learned how to systemize and get done isn't enough, and it's taking up too much of my time. And then a third of it is sort of the strategic thinking, which I think is really, really important, which is this idea of where is the company going, where do we need to land financially and from a resource point of view. So when I see my team's got their heads down, getting the work done on a day-to-day basis, they're not really necessarily thinking about hiring. So I'm thinking about hiring and who should we be getting in and what resources we should be buying in. So I think that it's sort of split between that kind of day-to-day stuff that I've just got to do, which is my day job, the legal and the financial, the stuff that only I as a CEO can do. A third where I'm sort of firefighting other stuff that nobody else has got their heads around. And then a third looking forward, because basically you're trying to describe where your ship's going. So you need to always be getting off the ship on a day-to-day basis and heading down the track and seeing what it looks like and coming back. And conversations like this today and meeting all of you guys, that's the kind of thing that helps nourish my ability to do that.
Are you generally quite strict about your scheduling in that each day has to be a third, and third, or is it no one day is the same?
No. I think I've got better. What I'm trying to work on at the moment is being a lot more proactive and intentional about what I'm trying to achieve every day. So every week I've got usually one big thing I'm trying to achieve, and then everything else is little stuff. And I'm trying to stop being so reactive to my inbox. So in fact, actually, I've taken everything out of my. I mean, we don't spend the whole hour talking about to-do list management, but it's a fascinating topic. But I've tried to pull everything out of my inbox and stick it into just one long list, so that my inbox is basically empty. And what I have to do is already archived, and I have to go in and find it to do it. To stop me from just being react to the latest notification. I turn all my notifications off, so my team know that essentially if I've got my head down for 2 hours, it's not, I have to go into Slack and actually see if somebody's chatted at me. I've cut out all of my apps from my phone, because otherwise you just become this little responsive bunny that's just going to, turn in any direction. And that's allowed me to spend more time. If you get 2 hours of straightforward time to concentrate on any topic, you get so much more done. And so that's what I try to do.
How about you, James?
I'd preface this with anyone hoping to hear words of wisdom from me on this. I can talk about what I do currently do, though, which sometimes works, sometimes doesn't, in my day-to-day schedule. But I think, in answer to your original question of what does a typical day look like, I think that's one of the challenges, because there's never such thing as a typical day in any startup, I think. But for me, I really think, whenever I talk to people outside of like the world we're in, like outside of this room, people always think that like being a manager or a CEO is this really great thing, because you get to tell everyone else what to do and you don't have to do too much work because everyone else is doing the work. But I find that for me, it's all about working for everyone else and making sure that everyone else knows what they've got to do and has everything they need to do it. And if there's anything blocking them, then I'm the one who's responsible for trying to remove that blocker. And so that's how I try and think about my role. One of the biggest challenges I have is, personally, is I'm a very product-focused person, and I love designing. Like, the reason we started this company was I met two of the geekiest guys at school, and we ended up building tech together in our spare time rather than like having fun. And I love designing, so I will go home and instead of watching something on Netflix, I'll probably try and design an interface. That's how much of a loser I am. But what I find very hard is managing being a CEO and like all of the stuff around that, and doing that design work, which is just totally different. And I'm sure lots of people in here have read a lot of Paul Graham's essays, but one of the ones that really I keep going back to is that maker versus manager schedule, and that's something I'm still working on. Ultimately, I think we need to make a hire to take away some of the design things that are on my plate, but at the moment that's just not the case. So yeah, it's trying to find that balance in the day for me.
So 10 years on, you're still the lead designer at the company and CEO?
At the moment, yeah.
Okay. I mean, let's talk about, you mentioned you're remote, your company's remote, but you guys are just kind of, you're down the road from us, right? And, in Moorgate. So is everybody in the one building?
Yeah. I think I really envy any company that can be remote. I think it's, I would, maybe someday we could have an aspect of remote working. At the moment, we've found that we find it hard enough to run the company all in one room. But yeah, we're all in one office, and I actually really enjoy that at the moment. I think there's a huge huge benefit from not just us all being plugged in and heads down, but I think compared to a lot of other companies I talk to, like founders and people at other companies, we try and do a lot to bring the team together, like having just small things, like we have lunch together, like people don't eat al desco or whatever, and we share so many stories, so many learnings by doing that, and I think
every day you have lunch together. Oh.
Pretty much. I mean, it's not like you're not going to get fired if you don't. But it's one of those things that I really like that we do, because we just get to know each other so much better, and you get so much more of a round picture of everyone on the team, I think, by doing small things like that. And it brings us closer and helps us work together, ultimately, I think.
And Bridget, so how did you sort of make the brave decision to be a remote company?
Partly because me and Keith live in Bedford, which is not known for being a tech hub. I think there's me and you can put me in one other software company. So I think the alternative was we had to figure out a way how we were going to build up and attract talent into Bedford. And that was going to be possible, but it wasn't. It was going to be a challenge, and not a very interesting challenge. Secondly, we hired, our first developer was in Spain. He lived in Seville, and he said, well, I'm not leaving Seville. So, and then because our focus, our actual customers, mostly 2/3 of them are in America. So we had to hire people in America to do our customer support. So really, once you've started to get people in those critical positions, but they're not where you are, it just naturally flows. And it took us a couple of years to appreciate that. For a while, I think I still thought we were going to build up people in Bedford in an HQ. And then after a while, I just gave it up. And so there's now 3 of us in Bedford, and the rest of us are distributed. And me and Keith have become distributed. So we've left our office, we work from home or from coffee shops, and it actually suits our natural way of being. So I think that it really matters what you feel comfortable with. I should say we're going to Costa Rica in 3 weeks' time, so we're not, we don't have lunch together, but when we do, we really make it worthwhile. So I mean, we do regularly get together. We don't hire people that we haven't had face-to-face time with. There's no substitute for face-to-face time, and we employ everybody. So You Can Book Me as an employer in Spain. We're an employer in America. So we're not trying to do it remotely as a sort of a subcontracted relationship. We're corporately a remote company.
Okay, so corporately a remote company. So hiring those US employees, what's the initial things that you have to do to?
There's a hard, expensive way, and then there's the slightly more straightforward way. And we chose the hard and expensive way before we realised that there's an easier way. But Balsamiq, I don't know if anybody here from Balsamiq, but I know they're sponsoring. I've had exactly the same conversations with Peldy about this. The way we did it was we set up a subsidiary company in America, because obviously you have to be registered as an employer there. And then we had to register in the different states where you want to hire, and that is ferociously complicated, difficult, boring, and unproductive. Because what happens if you hire somebody and then 2 months later you want to fire them, which has happened, and you've gone through all the pain of setting up. But we did it, and it's possible. And what you realise, and this is what Balsamiq have ended up doing, is that you end up actually limiting the states that you hire in, because you don't want to corporately do it. We have a good accountants though, and they support us and help us. But now we use JustWorks, which, again, and there's other companies like this, they're called an employer's professional organisation, and what they will do is they aggregate some of the paperwork for you through payroll and registration in those states and withholding taxes. So they do quite a lot of the work for you, and other payroll providers like Gusto will do it too. So you need to find good software which is going to handle withholding taxes in each state. And then corporately, we can't get away from being registered in some of those states, because some of those states like to take money directly from your company. But if you work with a company like JustWorks, a PEO, it's called Professional Employers Organization, they'll take some of the hassle away from you. But it's completely worth it, because it means that you can offer jobs to people in America as a UK company where they're getting exactly the same benefits, in fact, better benefits from us through, a pay slip and healthcare and all the other stuff. And as a result, we've got some people who've worked with us for quite a few years who are committed to You Can Book Me because, we've got You Can Book Me on their pay slip. And I think that matters to me, at least.
So you've got 5 employees in the US, a lot of customers in the US. James, you're 10 people in the UK, thereabouts.
Ballpark, yeah.
Yeah. Many US customers, and if so, like how do you have you had any issues with you just being based in the UK, or is it causing you a lot of late nights and dealing firefighting or anything?
Yeah, I think probably the first position we'd hire that would be remote would be in the customer facing side, the customer service side, because 40% I'd say of our customers are actually in the US. We somehow make that work at the moment. There are a few late nights, for sure. But I think that's just the nature of how our business has grown up. And I actually think it's one of the great things about building a SaaS company, especially a self-service SaaS business. Like, the whole point of this business is you don't actually need to have people in every part of the world to service those regions. So we have built up, hundreds and hundreds of customers in the US without having anyone there, purely from sort of inbound channels. And we give them good support for about half the day. And so I think, we do need to that is something we need to sort out, I think. But other than that, I think, hearing about some of those challenges, I'm glad we haven't had to go through some of that so far. I guess the trade-offs are, we do, cost-wise, trying to build a profitable business, it's not cheap having an office in central London. And there are definitely trade-offs there of we have discussed, would we be better off being a remote team and having 2 or 3 team members instead of having our office space? But so far, I think the benefits of having everyone together and having that close-knit team have outweighed it. And also just for us being in London, so many of our customers are on our doorstep, and we try and run events and make the most of being in London. So there's a lot of literally going to other floors in the building and talking to people, getting feedback on the problems we're solving, getting feedback on what other tools they're using, and using that to really inform us. Whereas if we were remote, that might be harder, I think. Yeah. So,
just sort of testing my knowledge and memory here. So obviously you've just said that you were profitable, and everybody heard that. I think you are profitable also.
Yes.
And also, neither of you have sales teams,
No.
and very little marketing as well. So is it all product driven? Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, we have a salesperson now,
Okay.
which is Sinead, who's actually here.
But you've only recently just hired the salesperson, like in
Sinead's
year
been
10 or
with us-
something like that, right?
Yeah, Sinead's been with us about 5 or 6 months now, I
Okay.
think. Yeah, so from the start, between us as 3, we didn't know anything about sales. We didn't know anything about marketing, really. We vaguely knew how to build a product, and sort of, back when we were at school, like we were learning how to code, learning how to design, and everything about how we built this business has been from, we didn't call it inbound marketing, but was really, we're building something, let's talk about it, let's write about it, let's write about the process we're going through building a company. And if we do that and we keep doing that at high enough quality, then it's probably going to help some people. And over time, that's just built up to be a really good machine for driving people to sign up for our platform and become customers. One of the things more recently, though, has been, okay, it's great getting customers paying sort of $100 a month, and Patrick will kill me for any pricing stuff I talk about.
He's not in the room, it's okay.
Oh, okay, cool. We can always be a lot more scientific whenever we watch Patrick's talks. But one of the things we're really working on right now is we've got our self-service process pretty well oiled. But now with Sinead joining and building out sales is to go up market a bit and figure out, we've pretty much by luck won some large businesses, and we know that if we get this process right, it could be a massive factor in growing our revenue base. So for us, going up market is a real big focus at the moment, and we're just learning a ton right now about how different that buyer is. Like, they don't care so much about border radiuses and drop shadows. They care about ROI. They care about real case studies, relevant case studies. They're far larger organizations, and navigating those organizations is a challenge, and everyone seems to be different. There's a lot of chat about building out a Salesforce integration, doing that, and learning that everyone uses Salesforce differently. There's so many challenges of going up market, but that's currently kind of our focus on the sales side.
Yeah, and Bridget, I guess we talk about it for a while, but in a nutshell, how have you grown to profitability without really kind of sales and marketing? Has it been a similar path to James?
It's yes, in one sense. We focused pretty much on growth and onboarding and customer support. So once we reached a critical mass of customers, our growth in revenue came through referrals. So the vast majority of our high value sales are from our existing customers who are adopting. One person in the team is using You Can Book Me, and then they decide that they want 5 people in the team, and then another team in a different department decides that they want to use online scheduling, and then they find out who else has been using it. And so essentially it all starts to grow. I mean, we're very lucky that our tool is by its very nature viral because it's scheduling. So everybody, we do 1 million bookings a month now. We're just about to reach our 30 million all-time booking total, and 20 million of those bookings has happened in the last 2 or 3 years. So bookings beget bookings. So we grow like that. But as I was saying to you this morning, we're a freemium tool. So our original growth strategy was around giving the tool away for free, which actually turns out it's not very compatible with making money, because you're anchoring your product at nothing. And then when people start using You Can Book Me, they're generally only paying us $10 a month. So it doesn't justify building out a sales team for that. So a bit like James, it's only now as we can see the model of much higher paying customers come through naturally, we can see what they're looking for and why they're adopting us. And so our next stage is to build a functioning sales team that can leverage our existing growth that we have.
Do you, not putting you on the spot here, but would you say that you're both, or your companies are very data-driven? Are you using dashboards? Are you checking metrics on a daily basis? And
I check money on a daily basis. Check how much money we're bringing in. I think you said you were going to ask a question about what metrics. I said, well, what metrics do I really care about? Actually, I genuinely care about how much money we make, because it is the route to profitability. So, when you're bootstrapping, you are counting your pennies every day. So even if it's £100 a day, then it's £150 a day, then it's £250 a day, then it's £500 a day, and you realize that actually even on that measure, you're still getting nowhere near a successful or profitable company. So you have to start to get into the multiples of thousands a day for it to really matter. And then even then, you're making a loss as a company. And so then you start to realize, well, we have to start making a profit. How do we do it? And by making a profit, you can increase prices, get more customers, reduce churn, reduce costs, and everything else that any other business decision we've made has been based around becoming profitable, because it's the only sustainable way. Otherwise, you literally run out of money and you go out of business. So there's no alternative. So that every other metric that I care about is related to our ability to build a successful, profitable company. Because once you're, and we have been profitable for the last 2 years. Once you're profitable, you can build up a reserve, you can build up contingency, you can hire. I used to hire into my growth rate, which was fine when your growth rate's 500%. But as with all SaaS tools, if you don't do anything to nurture your growth rate, it starts to go down. So you can't hire into an expectation of making twice as much in 6 months' time. So for me, it's been very, very important to make sure that the business is sustainable and that we have a protection against churn, which isn't just growth.
And James.
So I think I mentioned earlier we actually raised a little bit of money at one point.
How much?
Well, a little bit. We raised a small round instead of going to university, which was about $100K, which was all the money in the world for us as kids. And I think it was only really, and we raised it a round after that as well, actually, because we suddenly got onto
Which
this.
was how much?
So when we were 18, 19, we had a choice of going to uni or not. We raised about $100K, which led us to working full time on GoSquared, which was really exciting. But then we hired someone, and we hired another person, and I think we hired another person. Suddenly we were like, this isn't a profitable company anymore, and all of the investors and everything told us to raise more money. So we went out and raised more money, and we raised closer to $1 million that time. So when I said a little bit, it's a little bit compared to a lot of companies out there today, but this was a lot of money for us. And I never realized how quickly things could get out of control when you raise money. At the time we were below the legal drinking age in America still. That was the thing I remember, because we went to San Francisco and snuck into bars, such daredevils. And we suddenly had this money on hand, and we didn't know how to spend it, but we were being pressured to spend it. And we ended up hiring, and hiring without much, enough of a hiring process, enough of a management process, enough of a product process, any process. And suddenly the costs just start going up and up and up. And we learned so many mistakes through that process, and eventually came to a realization, look, we're going to be out of business if we don't correct this. So we had some really tough conversations with some of the team. We cut a lot of costs and got ourselves back to a point where we're like, we know we can run the business profitably now and build up revenue from there. And since then, thankfully, we've had very supportive investors that have had the patience to wait for us to get to a point where we're now growing really nicely again and profitable. But I think one of the things that often doesn't get talked much about in like tech and startups is cost saving as well. It's so dull compared to, oh man, we're growing at 50% a month, and that's all great. Like growth, everyone needs growth, but costs can so easily get out of control. And that's something that I think by having the aim of being somewhat profitable, like you start thinking about, do we really need, like, I don't know, all the swag at the conference? Do we need those stickers? Do we there's this fine line between penny pinching and just being sensible. And I think overall, one of the things we always strive for as a company is to keep things simple and keep things really clear cut. And I think it just gives us this sort of discipline not to splurge and spend money on too many tools or too many things. So I think that's been a really healthy thing for us. In terms of metrics we care about MRR, we care about Net Promoter Score. Because I think a lot of the revenue metrics are obviously critical, but they're often lagging indicators to what's actually going on. So really obsessing about that full funnel from traffic to the site, trial signups, a good definition of activation, which is actually quite hard. And then, average revenue per customer, LTV, and Net Promoter Score are kind of the key ones for us, yeah.
What tools are you using to track those metrics?
This is another thing we actually struggled with a bit, because when we started, we were purely an analytics company for a while. We built a real-time analytics dashboard for your website. And that was one of the first kind of parts of the platform. And we had this crisis of conscience because we wanted better tooling, but we were always thinking, should that be in the product or not? And everyone would talk to us as if, oh, you guys must know everything about analytics because you're building an analytics product. But in reality, we actually had worse analytics than most other companies, because for everything that someone else had built a tool in the analytics space for, we were like, no, we're not going to use that because we can have that in our product. So every analytics tracking decision became, wait till we've built it, wait till we built it. And it's only been relatively recently in our history that we've gotten a bit more comfortable with focusing more on marketing and sales and letting other tools that are sort of best in class for other things be used. So we use Amplitude for product metrics, essentially, because that's not really a space we think we can be the best in the world at. And we use, dare I say it, Baremetrics for some stuff. But I'm not totally.
Why are you not allowed to talk about Baremetrics?
Just Patrick runs another fantastic
Has he not heard
company
of
in the
Baremetrics?
space. Patrick mentioned it once or twice in his talk, but yeah. Overall, though, the tooling on the metric side, I kind of feel like really the thing that I talk to a lot of founders about these metrics, especially things like activation and product metrics, and I think one of the real challenges is always having those definitions of what you're tracking well understood within the team. And that's where, no matter what tool you're using, people seem to fall down, because everyone thinks activation is this thing, but actually it's this totally different thing. Or weekly active users is, if you don't have a clear understanding across the team of how that metric's tracked, it's kind of pointless. So that's one of the things we try and focus on as a team, is fewer numbers, but really clear and well understood numbers. And the tooling is kind of, whatever,
So I guess picking up on the cost savings sort of element, I think, Bridget, or I know that you were profitable, or you've always thought about cost savings, and we actually spoke about it in a podcast, but you've been profitable for a couple of years, and you were 13 people and then made a decision actually to reduce that to 10. And I guess we're even more profitable now. But can you explain a little bit about that and how that sort of impacted the business, why you did that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this is, I think I'm sure everybody in this room would agree that hiring is the most difficult and fraught thing that you can possibly do, especially when you're spending money on it. And so sometimes you have to hire people because there's a human sacrifice involved. So our product was too difficult for people to, the self-service dream in the early years was not really working. So you have to hire a whole lot of customer support people because they've just got to help pick people up as they sort of fall off the boat. So our numbers have kind of grown and reduced because of that natural thing. Because once you realise you've got half your company's customer support people, you need to invest in people who are going to make the design of the product better so that you don't do that. So that's what's happened. And so we went from, at one point we had 6 people in support and we went down to 3 last year. And I've subsequently hired more people into that team because we can now invest in much more to do with customer success and onboarding, which is more of our focus, rather than just simply this is where you get your login, details sent to and so on. So that's kind of a bit more of a natural curve. I think where I've tried to be a bit more strategic about it is, and this is just naturally as a result of not having an unlimited checkbook of money, is you can only hire for the jobs that critically need to happen inside your company, where they're going to bring back, and it's really, really simple and quite brutal to say this to anybody you're paying a salary to, but let's say I'm giving, £40,000 to somebody a year to say, you need to bring me back, not just the £40,000 that otherwise I'm spending on you, but more. I need to get £41,000 back into the success of the company. Otherwise, I'm losing money. Now, you can obviously do that over a period of a couple of years. So, my head of UI UX guy, so, for his first year, he cost me a lot of money out of salary because I didn't see that back. But what he has put in terms of product and design and value into the product has meant that I've had to hire less people because of him. So then you get your money back as a result. So I think that's where hiring has to be strategic. You have to have a reason. You can't just hire more people because you want to be a company of 20 people and 30 people and 50 people. The number of people you employ is not a good metric for the success of your company. I would want to know how many people, what are they all doing, and how much is it costing you, and why have you got them all, and why is it contributing to your bottom line at the end of the day? Where's your net profit benefiting from that? Otherwise, it's just money leaving your bank account. So that's how I felt. I also think that it is stressful and boring to deal with HR issues all the time. And so the fewer people I have, the better life I have. So I deliberately want to keep it small. But that's not to say that then there's times when I'm doing, I was saying to you, answering your first question, I'm testing all the time who we need to hire based on the measure of, well, how many jobs am I doing? And if I'm doing too many of this job, then I'm going to hire somebody to do it.
Are you pretty quick, if you can see that somebody is not quite right for the job within a couple of months, are they gone?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, would you say so, James, as well? I'm sure everybody in this room has had the unfortunate experience of having to fire somebody, but it's so much better if it happens quickly, when you realise you can have the conversation with them to say it's not working out, this is not right, and you can say it's not you, it's me, and it usually is. It's usually about companies where we're not the fit for them because, it could be that we're remote, or it could be that we're not big enough, or it could, there's all sorts of things that I don't apologise for about the way our company is that don't fit perfectly good people, who would fit in somewhere else much better. So, but it's so much better to get rid of them. That sounds awful, but for them to leave early than drag on for years on end.
I suck at this with the people management side of things. I think kind of back to some of my earlier points, we try and have an environment where very close-knit team. And I think it's sometimes incredibly, I have had to let people go in the past, and it is never an easy conversation. But every time it's happened, and I know a lot of people share this sentiment, that every time it's happened, I've wished we'd had that conversation earlier. Yeah. And I used to think, also on the other side of it, of like people leaving, I always used to think, God, the company's over, like we're doomed, someone left, or and I think a lot of that came down to my immaturity, not just of running a company, but in life. Like people change jobs, and if either side of the equation feels it's not the right environment. The best thing you can do for both sides is to have that conversation up front and be really direct about it. I've historically sucked at being direct with people because of the friendliness of the team, and it's always something I'm trying to work on personally. We all want to be like a happy group of people, but I think not to go too much off on this, but I talked to a few people recently, and they likened it to, you don't really want to be a family, you want to be more like a sports team. And I think one of the things to bear in mind is just sometimes you bring people in and they realize actually like the role's not quite what they wanted it to be, and sometimes people want to be in a different role, and having conversations around that are direct are really important, because you can't have like your goalkeeper playing as a striker. You're going to screw up the whole team then. So I think having those conversations is like, you're doing a disservice to the individual and to the team if you don't correct those things. And so I think, I'm trying to find this balance of like, this is a business, this is really objective, but also we're really chummy and all get lunch together. It's a very fine balance.
I don't have lunch with my team.
Yeah, that's the solution.
Maybe cut back on the lunches. Yeah.
Can I just say, just about cost saving, because it's a good point. Just more generally, not just about people, but something which I am now, I kind of almost have the indulgence of being able to do, which I'm focusing on this year, is that we're switching. You spend your whole time with your own product and you're desperate that people don't churn and switch, and then you're doing sales deals and discounts. It kind of occurred to me like, well, I could be doing that. So we are changing our email transaction provider. We're changing our payment processor from the usual. We're looking at changing our SMS provider. AWS, you might not know this, but if you switch to a 3-year deal on AWS, you can save 50% of AWS costs. So actually, once you get to a certain point and you have your self-purchasing power, you realize that you can shave, we're probably going to be shaving around £10,000 a month off our costs simply by renegotiating and switching. And the thing is, switching from tools that you like and you're comfortable with and everybody knows how to log in is a complete pain in the arse. But actually, to save £10,000 a month just by making a few key switches, or if you indicate to that company that you're about to churn, they'll give you a better price. It is always worth it. It's worth its money.
And that's you leading the cost control, cutting and negotiations with these vendors, or have you got somebody in the team doing it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know what it's like, because you guys do it with your own customers. Your own customers are coming to you looking for, how much are you going to price them? What could they get if they pay for 12 months? So I now have what I realized. The consequence of being profitable, unless you're investing that into growth, which is obviously an option, is that you become cash rich. As soon as you're cash rich, you have purchasing power. So you can say, yes, I'm going to buy 12 months or a 24-month contract, and I'm going to save 30 or 40%. And so you don't need to live from hand to mouth, and then your savings go into your P&L over a longer period of time. But that is the goal, is to get a company which you can see functions on a longer term basis, and get out of that mentality of, well, we're just surviving, we're just keeping on going until we fall over. And instead I feel in a more of a stable position now, where I can afford to think long term. I used to think it was crazy. People would buy 2-year subscriptions on You Can Book Me. And I'd be saying to Keith, 2 years? 2 years? Oh my God, like, I'm not committing to being on You Can Book Me for 2 years. And it's like, and it's still, somebody yesterday wants to buy a 3-year contract. And now I can understand it more. From our purchasing power, we can buy in those savings. And I know those savings are going in over time.
Just a quick final one then from me before I think we throw it over to the audience and Twitter. So quickly, what's the one thing that you love and one thing that you hate on a daily basis about running a SaaS company? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, that wasn't on the list, Alex.
Yeah, Alex, where did that come from? Damn it. One thing I think one of the things I love the most about this, and I think is one of the reasons why we started doing this and have continued, is it sounds a bit sentimental, but building a product that real people anywhere in the world are using and loving, not just using and but when they get in touch and say, this helped us win a customer, or this made my day a bit brighter because of XYZ. That stuff is worth so much more to me personally than like any kind of pay rise or financial thing on a daily basis. Those things just pick us up and pick the whole team up, and we try as much as we can to really like push that within the team and in the company, because you're building this thing, you're slaving over it, you're putting your blood, sweat and tears into this thing, and to know it impacts people in a positive way, it really is awesome. Something I hate, I basically something I think I need to get better at is just 24/7 feeling like I have got to respond and think about stuff, and figuring out a better way to perhaps shut some stuff off in a box when I leave the office. I could probably learn a thing or two from you on that, Bridget.
Things that I love. I mean, it's all people orientated. So even though I don't have lunch with them, I really do love the people that I work with. We have some absolutely exceptional people, and I love. I mean, I know that you guys here all. In each of your ways, you're the boss. You're the one making a decision, and that feels good. But to be able to empower somebody else who works for, somebody who's working for my company, who doesn't need to, if that makes sense, does something amazing for the company, enjoys what their job is, and is growing and nurturing what we're doing. And they've done that off their own back, and they haven't done that because I've told them to do it. It gives me a great sense of freedom and an enjoyment when we're building a team together that's empowered and productive. And when I see that on a daily basis, I have that feeling of how amazing, the people are who work for us. And the worst is also people. So when you get that gut-wrenching feeling when you've let a customer down, when somebody's unhappy, and it doesn't matter, you get somebody complain to you via LinkedIn late at night, and you just feel like you have to reply back because you're really sorry or whatever has gone on. And the customer experience, in the end of the day, is ultimately the transactional thing that you're doing. You're asking somebody to give you money so that you can give them a product in return. And if they've given you money and you haven't given them that product, and you haven't, done your side of the bargain, that's gut wrenching, and it's letting customers down. And this sounds like a huge cliche, but it is true, because you get involved in this relationship with your customers and about what you're doing. And so I find that very difficult. That's like the last thing. At the end of the day, we all will fall on our faces before we would let a customer down, or we'll try to fix whatever has happened, because it does happen sometimes.
Thomas, any questions from the audience or Twitter?
So first question, hopefully I pronounced this correctly, but Saravana Kumar. Question 1, what's your typical day as a CEO? I think that'll be relevant for a lot of people here. It probably starting out, they might have small teams starting to hire. So I guess if I add to that question as well, how's that developed with time as you've hired more people and kind of grown your team out?
It was me. That's not my real question. I got two more important questions for you. I guess both of you are into very competitive market now. I guess you're fighting with the intercom and diverting funding, and that's one side. For you, the market is getting very, very crowded with Calendly, and now people like even HubSpot and drift scheduling, everybody is getting into that direction. So how do you handle that big competition?
How do we handle competition?
Yep.
So yes, that's absolutely right. You could name 100 different online scheduling tools. So we're certainly not breaking new ground. Having said that, though, I've made my peace with that, because for years and years, when we first launched You Can Book Me, literally a year later, Google brought out Google Appointments, and everybody thought we were dead. We had Doodle, used to do booking tools, and then after a while, things happen, people change. You know, Tungle closed down, Doodle closed down their Book Me thing. Google actually withdrew Appointments, and then Calendly came on stream, and a few other really good tools. And the overall effect has been we're in a rising tide. So it doesn't really matter how many people pop in, because we're basically all going up together, because we're in a business where people are adopting tools. And so whether they adopt Calendly, or they adopt You Can Book Me, or they go for Appointlet, or they go for Schedule Once, or they go for any of the other tools that are out there, it's probably because that tool fits their specific needs. And so what I realize is that people who come to You Can Book Me do so because we're doing something which is very particularly about what they want, that Calendly doesn't do, or people will switch away from You Can Book Me to Schedule Once because Schedule Once has a particular feature that they want. So that's about product development and being confident about your product and who you're going for. But more importantly, and this is more of a meta point, is that you need competition to give you relevance to your product. Because if nobody else is out there, and for example, when we launched You Can Book Me in 2011, we were the only scheduling tool that integrated directly with Google's Calendar API. So as a result of that, it was only kind of institutional adopters, people like educational schools and universities that used Google Apps for education, or Google Apps for Work. So Shopify was one of the first big tech companies that adopted You Can Book Me, and that was 6 years ago. And Box and Shopify actually, because they had the kind of culture and tools inside their companies where they were using Google Calendar, and You Can Book Me fitted straight in. But for most people, they just didn't think of their calendars like that, and it was a bit alien. Once this little crop of new tools have come along in the last few years, they've proved we've been a trailblazer, but they've proved the space, and now it becomes a choice. So the fact that you've said somebody might use Calendly, somebody might use You Can Book Me, that helps me, because it's like it's free trade. Everybody rises. Whereas in 5-6 years ago, it was just You Can Book Me, and then people don't like being told that that's the only tool that they're going to use. So I would say, and I've met quite a few founders who run online scheduling tools, and we're actually quite a happy little bunch together, because we have the same, you have the same challenges and the same interests. And as long as it's a credible competitive space and nobody is toxic towards each other, I'm quite happy. I think it's actually it's much better. It's like you guys were saying about the SaaS and the conference space. You've actually got to share to get better, and then that gives you the impetus to be more confident about what you're doing, and as a result is more enjoyable.
I only want to share with Thomas and nobody else.
Ditto everything that Bridget just said. But I do think competition is one of those things that I've evolved my thinking on it over time, and I think it's something in the startup ecosystem that I think we spend so much time concerned about, and every time I've paid too much attention to competition, it's taken us off on a route that we really didn't want to be on. And I think when you combine competition and investor thinking and large sums of VC money, you end up like, and tech press as well. Everyone wants you to be the competitor to X. And before you know it, and we've found this ourselves, you end up getting pushed down this avenue of like, how do we make sure we're more like them, and feature for feature, copy and pasting. And that's kind of just unhealthy. Also, I would add that like in B2B software as a service, like I'm not sure if any of these markets are winner takes all markets. Like, hey, I am fine with a bunch of companies being billion-dollar companies in our space. If we only make $100 million business, I'm not going to be crying. I mean, I would love a billion-dollar business too. And it's such a huge space that it's not unforeseeable that there can be multiple billion-dollar companies, which I think is just insanely exciting. I'd also just emphasize that like we keep a pretty close eye on who uses our product. And it's interesting how many of the companies you just mentioned sign in on a regular basis to borrow ideas from our little company that's 7 or 8 people when they've got teams of hundreds of people. And I think it just kind of proved to me that like you can put up a great facade and raise a lot of money, but you still got to come up with ideas and execute on them. And a lot of these companies have seemingly made it but they're still scrambling around and scrapping around like the smaller ones here, and like all of us. So yeah, I think all in all, just there's so many other things to worry about aside competition that it doesn't keep me up at night anymore. Yeah.